The sixth child of Azari and Labossiere of Saint Leon, Fernand married Rita Beaupre, who was the daughter of Edmund and Jeanette Fortier Beaupre from Dunria in 1952. Fernand and Rita took residence on a farm in Saint Leon and were blessed with the births of their 10 children. They started with a very modest home with the bare necessities. Over many years of hard work and determination, they succeeded in developing a successful model farm. Rita was a vibrant woman who loved life and lived it to the fullest. Always very energetic with never a dull moment. She was forever helping others and putting others' needs before her own. Her gentle and generous heart touched many lives. Her warmth and compassion will be remembered by every life she touched. She had a very deep devotion for her grandchildren, of whom she was very fond. Fernand, although a private man, influenced his descendants and his family by his honesty, generosity, and sense of humor. So this was an old farm couple. Obviously, it seems to have French Canadian background. So others spent endless hours reading about current historical events, local and national. Although retired for several years, he had a strong passion for farming. He also worked with family members. Remi Labe was raised and resided in Saint Leon. He took pride in his endeavors, like his father, always researching new agricultural methods. Carpentry was one of his occupations in which he took great pride. His favorite pastimes were playing cards with family and friends as well as playing jokes on them. His overwhelming generosity and great sense of humor will always be remembered by all. So we're talking about the Labossiere family. The Labossières had lived most of their lives in the Saint Leon area. Fernand spent much of his life working as a grain farmer, but in later years, Remi ran the farm. The home apparently burnt to the ground overnight on November 26, 2005. Without anyone noticing the smoke and fire, as it was bordered by trees on 3 sides and is not visible from the road. A man working in the area detected the strong smell of smoke and decided to investigate further. The bodies of Fernand, Rita, and Remi were found in the remains of their burnt-out Saint Leon area farmhouse. It was initially believed that Fernand, who was 79 years old at the time, and Rita, who was 74, and Remi, who was 44, had died in the fire, which destroyed their rural home. But autopsies conducted days later revealed all 3 had been shot. It had been believed the fire was sparked by a faulty wood heater, but when the bullet wounds were found, RC investigation. Refusing to comment on the cause of the blaze, whether the death might have been a murder-suicide, in an interview with the Winnipeg Free Press about a week after the fire, the surviving son, Denis Jerome Labossiere, and his brother, Remi, had told many people in a small town that he'd recently taken out a life insurance policy on himself in the range of $500,000. It's believed he named several friends as beneficiaries, and RCMP were trying to track down the insurer and details of the policy. So Jerome was quoted as saying, "We're hoping the life insurance is going to clarify some of this. People can behave in an irrational way when a substantial amount of money is at stake." This is really a mystery. Everybody got along good within the family, and as far as I know, they didn't have any enemies. So Jerome Labossiere also told the RCMP he was angry the RCMP didn't take greater steps to secure the scene after the fire destroyed his family's home. He said that was very troubling. It should have been sealed off from the start. Even if a charge is eventually laid, a good lawyer would be able to use that to their advantage. So Remi was heavily in debt, and court documents shed light on Remi, who was allegedly involved in a 2-year affair with a married woman. She apparently left his place around midnight. She and her husband were investigated in the murder, but were cleared. The documents also show Rita Labossiere had been out that night and returned at around 11 o'clock. Jerome Labossiere, he had some bad debts, and at the time of the murder, he was in a legal battle over the family farm, valued at more than $1 million, according to court documents. So, Labossieres and turn up dead. The farmhouse is burnt to a crisp, and these guys are thinking, well, it's tragic. The house burnt down. Then they do the autopsy. The coroner's looking at it and says, no, there's bullet holes in these people. And so, well, it sounds like some type of a murder was involved. The question was this a murder suicide? Remi's got a lot of debt. So, he's in the middle of this legal battle. And then 1 week after, Jean DeRoche's grandparents and uncle were murdered. Denis Jerome Labossiere came to him with an offer. He said, we talked about the will and estate. DeRoche's testified. He offered me $25,000 for my share of the estate. So the DeRoche said Denis Jerome became agitated when he turned down his buyout offer. I asked him if I was going to get a bullet in the head if I don't agree with this, DeRoche said, and he said no comment. So Denis Jerome Labossiere seems like he's out there in the neighborhood, in the area. These guys' grandparents and uncle got murdered. And then this guy turns up out the blue and he's like, hey, since they've passed away, I don't think you're interested in farming, are you? Why don't you just let me buy out your share, they take there the farm, whatever. I'll give you $25,000. He's kind of like, well, 25,000, like what, for like an acre? Like, I'm not worth right now. No, I'm okay, I'm good though, right? I'm not gonna end up murdered. He's like, well, we'll see. So, I don't know what's going on here, but this guy's whole family's dead. Other people are turning up dead, and he's approaching them to buy, their relatives to buy their farm. So, other family members testified to Denis Jerome's attempts to buy out their shares of the estate. The court has heard evidence that Remi had sole ownership of the farm, with an estimated value in excess of $1 million. And then Remi's will left his estate to his 7 nieces and nephews. So what happened then is that Denis Jerome claimed that there's a second will that left the bulk of the estate to his son, Denis Jerome, to his son. And then Denis Jerome later withdrew any claim of a second will. He was like, well, yeah, no, it was his farm, I guess, yeah, and he's leaving it to all the kids there, like his kids and our kids. So, yeah, cool. But I think there's another will. Because everybody else got multiple kids, and I just got one kid. I just thought, like, it was just kind of equal amongst us, and then we divide amongst our kids. Or wasn't there a second will? Everybody's kind of like, no. He's like, oh, never mind. So this guy's moving a little shady out here. And family members testified that Denis Jerome was upset with the way that Remi was mismanaging the family farm. So apparently the farm issue came up frequently. The nephew, Daniel Labossiere, testified. In a will in 2000, Remi Labossiere left proceeds from the estate to his 6 nephews and nieces. However, a second will, written shortly before the murders, left all the property to Jerome Labossiere and his wife, Claudette. So Remi had sole ownership of the property. So I guess, let's explain, as far as I can tell, this family tree. So you had the parents, French-Canadian family. They started a farm. They had two boys, but Remi was the one that was actually farming. So the dad was out of it, and he said, "Look, I'm leaving everything over to Remi. Remi's operating the farm, and he owns the farm." And then Remi's trying to get his affairs in order. He knows he's got a lot of debt hanging around, everything else. And when he does his will up, he says, "We'll leave it all to the kids. We'll leave it to the next generation. See if any of them want to farm, or they can figure it out." And it's like, what's going on here? Like, what's going on with the farm? I'm hearing you're in debt. I'm talking about leaving this all to the kids. Look, why don't we do another will where if you pass away, you just leave it all to me? Knock on wood, if you were to pass away, and obviously if like mom and dad was to pass away or whatever, let's just do another will. We'll just leave it all to me. Um, so I guess, right before the murders, he just like wrote up this will. Um, but yeah, I mean, he left everything to the nieces and nephews. And so the family members didn't start talking to police until several months after the murders, when the second will emerged, leaving the estate to Jerome's son. So he's like, no, it wasn't a will left to us. It was for my kid. Like, I'm trying to, six nieces and nephew. I got one kid. You know what I mean? That's all that was. It was just the bulk of it, I guess you want to call it that. But like, no, it wasn't that. It's all good. Like, we'll figure it out. So the RCMP, Constable Robert Thorarenson said a city police officer told him on February 3rd, 2006, that a confidential informant said Denis Jerome Labossiere is on the outs with the Hells Angels right now, and that Labossiere is carrying around a gun for protection. So I guess Labossiere is portrayed as an associate of Manitoba's Hells Angels president, and Ernie Dew. So at that time, much of the evidence in the Project Defense cases centered around Franco Atanasovic, who is a civilian agent for police who wore recording devices during meetings with suspected criminal targets. Atanasovic, who has admitted in court to having a lengthy criminal record, was paid $525,000 for his role and is now under witness protection. So this has come up in past episodes and other episodes. Telling, snitching, whopping, entrapping, whatever you want to call it, it's a very lucrative business in this city. Especially if you got anything like gang ties. Talking about 20 years ago, they was paying people $500,000. I don't know what it would be now. I think, with inflation upwards, people might even be getting $1 million now. Just to snitch on everybody, give them money, and we'll give you a new identity. So, you're not going to go to jail. That's fine. We just want you to tell on everybody. So, that guy was telling, and, they had a whole operation wrapped around Atanasovic, but, part of the reason Atanasovic was able to get so close to the bikers was his long association with Ernie Dew. So Labossiere said on the day of the funeral following the farm fire that Denis Jerome told him the parents were a mistake or a surprise. So Daniel said Denis Jerome introduced him to Hintz, another man, who's Jeremy Tupin, in the summer of 2005. And Daniel said he later gave Jeremy Tupin a job at his construction company. Daniel said he continued to socialize several months after murders. Daniel said he and Hintz were driving over the Norwood Bridge in March 2006, and Hintz asked if Jerome told him what happened on the farm. Had he told you what happened on the farm there? And I said, yeah, he did, and I kind of just let it die. He's like, oh yeah, he told me, because he's just thinking, yeah, he told me, parents got killed, whatever. I wrote that, yeah. And then Daniel said some weeks later, the two men were waiting at the Windsor Park nightclub, and Daniel confronted Hintz about these killings and said, I asked, what could Jerome possibly promised you to commit these murders or whatever they were? Daniel said, I asked, is this how you guys got the down payment on the house? He said, yes. So, apparently this guy had some connections to some bikers, and, loosely through his connections in the mix was this paid informant, and the paid informant's kind of talking to one of his employees who works for Dennis as a construction worker or something, and so it was Hintz, and Hintz is kind of asking him like, what happened, right? He's like, yeah, I know. Not realizing like, do you know what happened? And then he kind of like, it sat with him for a while, and he's like, what was he trying to say? So then he kind of followed up. He's like, so what'd you get for that body? And he's like, what? He's like, is that how you got the down payment for the house? He's like, yeah. So I thought you knew it was up, or yeah, no, so I got the down payment. So, according to this guy basically got his whole family killed, and the tag was a down payment on a mortgage for 3 bodies. It turned out. So, the court previously heard testimony that Hintz and Jeremy Tupin were living together in a Winnipeg house that Tupin later purchased from his father. And Daniel said he and Hintz were drinking at his office later that night when Hintz started crying. He was very emotional, saying, I can't believe what I did on the farm. I want to kill myself. So Daniel said, like, I pushed him. I snapped, Daniel said. I told him to stop talking about it. I didn't want to hear about it. So this guy's, he wanted a better life. He wanted a down payment for a house. So he did it, but he didn't realize maybe he's not a killer. Maybe he's not a hitman, because this is weighing on him. He's still gotta pay his mortgage every month and everything. So, it's a deposit. 3 people are dead. And I think it's kind of starting to soak in with him, like, what he really did. Especially when he's drinking and he's trying to escape it, but he can't. And, so he's very emotional. But he had made, a bunch of statements about how Jerome was just angry about how Remi was handling the farm. And at one point, Denis Jerome Labossiere suggested that Remi should be shot. And Clark told the court. So Clark said a couple of days after the funeral, for the 3 Labossiere family members, he and Jerome talked about news that they had been shot. Clark testified, he said to Labossiere, I hope it wasn't you. And Labossiere replied, even if it was, they wouldn't be able to pin it on me. So he seems to say a lot of self-incriminating things whenever these things come up. I don't know if he's trying to do the whole, I'm a tough guy, let me, but in case you weren't aware, I'm not going to say it type shit. So, I don't see why you would do that, but that was I guess, his personality. So, the jury also heard testimony from Nicole Labossiere Clark, who's the sister of Jerome and Remi. So I guess the 2 brothers also had a sister, and as her kids are supposed to be getting some at the farm. And So she was hearing about the will in which Remi left his estate, the family farm, to 7 nieces and nephews. So Remi Labossiere's estate was worth about 1.3 million, but it carried 500,000 in debt. And the court heard Labossiere Clark testify that Jerome Labossiere offered 25,000 to each of the nieces and nephews for their shares. So it's 6 nephews, it's 7 nephews and nieces. I'm not really sure, but if it's 7, he's offering them $175,000 on a farm that's 500,000 in debt, but it's supposed to be worth 1.3 million. So 175,000, but you're trying to get like 800,000 in equity out of this thing. Like, how does that work? But he's basically like, well, I don't have to sell the farm. I mean, you guys all got some cash. Like, you guys aren't gonna do nothing with it, or what are we doing? It's an offer. I mean, just consider it. Just consider it. 25,000 each. It goes a long way, right? So he started telling family members about this second will that made his son the sole heir of the family farm, and the second will also allowed Jerome Labossiere to run the farm rent-free. But the document was apparently signed by Jerome and Remi Labossiere, but it had not been witnessed. And another sister, I guess they had now yet another sister, who's Paulette Desrochers, testified on Monday that she confronted Jerome Labossiere about his involvement in his family members' deaths, and Jerome became angry and said, "They are casualties of war." So every time like somebody like kind of prods him about this, he just digs himself a deeper hole. Like, he never dismisses it, he never denies it. So an interesting approach, considering you got like a triple homicide kind of hanging around over your head, and a lot of people kind of, suspicious of you. You think you'd want to kind of say things more along the lines of, "What? No, I love them. I love my family. Oh my God!" Like, he's more or less just like, "Fuck them. If they die, they die. I'm out here, and if they want to put it on me, then you're gonna have to fucking prove the shit. Cause I got a lawyer. I got what? Like, yo, wait, what? Like, are you not grieving your family?" So, the RCMP alleged that Jerome, who is seen as just God by the two younger men, planned the killings for his own financial gain. On the night he died, Remi was visited by a married woman, the owner of the local hotel, with whom he was having an affair. According to search warrant documents, she had been out with her husband that night, and when she got home, found an email from Remi inviting her over. Her husband, who didn't know of the affair, fell asleep, and the woman met Remi at his home. They had sex, the documents say. So, she kind of got her business dragged into this. However, she was moving around with old farmer Remi. Her and hubby had a night on the town. I guess he fell out, and she wasn't satisfied and needed to go stop by Remi's place. So she was the last one basically to see him. She said he was in good spirits, and she found an email wishing her sweet dreams when she got home. I guess they're communicating by email. I've dealt with some women who start communicating by email. We won't get into that. So she was also the dispatcher for the local fire department, and around 6 a.m. she took the call about the blaze of the Labossiere farm. So she sounded the alarm for the volunteer firefighters, including her husband, to fight the fire, but it was already too late for the people inside. So, that's an interesting situation there as well. According to the search warrant documents, the woman's husband was considered a person of interest in the case, but eliminated as a suspect after passing a polygraph test. The documents reveal that Remi was shot in the back of the leg and through the brain. Fernand was shot through the liver and spinal cord, and Rita was shot through the neck. Their bodies were so badly burned, however, that it wasn't until several days later that bullet fragments were discovered at the autopsy, and police realized that they were dealing with a triple homicide. So 2 months in the police investigation, Jerome became a person of interest. The police were told that a year before the killings, Jerome had said to his friend, Andre Grenier, "Do me a favor and get rid of my brother. Do an accident for me." So he'd been shopping this murder for like at least a year prior. Then he started spending time with Mr. Tupin and Mr. Hintz, who apparently looked up to him. And they were barely out of high school. According to their parents, they were in awe of Denis Jerome. Mr. Tupin's father told police he was worried they were under the control of Jerome Labossiere and getting caught up in dealing drugs. So 11 days after the killings, Mr. Tupin registered the purchase of a $100,000 house in Winnipeg, which even in 2005, that's not the most expensive house. But houses were a fair bit cheaper. That was probably more like a regular $250,000 house, like an entry-level home. Dan Labossiere, Jerome's nephew, and a friend to Mr. Tupin, and Mr. Hintz, asked Mr. Hintz what Jerome had given him to commit the murders. He said, "Is that how you got the down payment to the house?" To which Mr. Hintz answered yes. So the documents allege that Denis Jerome Labossiere orchestrated the murders of his brother and didn't flinch when his alleged henchman said his parents would have to be killed as well, jurors were told. So I guess these kids are kind of there. They're about to do this hit, and they're like, "Your parents are in there. Like, we can't do it right now." He's like, "Fuck them. Like, fucking black it out. I'm done with this. Like, it's happening tonight. I don't give a shit." So they said, "All right. I mean, with the down payment on this home." So the star witness in the case against Labossiere and co-accused Michelle Hintz was Jeremy Tupin. So one of the boys flipped. And he said Labossiere hired him, along with Hintz, to kill his brother Remi, make it look like a suicide. Tupin said when he told Labossiere it would be impossible to kill Remi without killing his parents, Rita and Fernand, Labossiere didn't argue. He accepted it and said, "Go ahead," said Tupin. So Tupin said his father introduced him to Denis Jerome in 2004. The following year, Denis Jerome helped Tupin land a job with the nephew, Daniel Labossiere's construction company, in the fall of 2005. So he wasn't working for Denis Jerome's construction company. He was working for one of the nephews, I guess, had a little construction thing going. And so I guess what happened is that in the fall of 2005, Tupin began moving cocaine for Denis Jerome. So he's working for the nephew, and he kind of meets the uncle, and the uncle's like, "Hey, you want some coke to sell?" And this kid's like, "Yeah, I guess." I don't know. I guess he wanted to get into selling coke. So it sounds like Denis Jerome used to get coke through the Hells Angels and get kids to sell it or something like that. It was around that time that Denis Jerome started complaining about his brother Remi. He said he was gambling a lot, putting himself in debt. Tupin said he wanted to get rid of him. So Tupin said Denis Jerome enlisted him and his housemate Hintz to carry out the killing. He said, "I wanted a purpose in life, and this seemed like something." That's an interesting take. We all need a purpose in life. I guess it's something. So Denis Jerome paid the men $10,000, some of which was used as a down payment on a house. Tupin said Labossiere's first idea was to have the men follow Remi to the local bar where he played VLTs and then kill him and everyone in it. What the hell? That's kind of a dumb plan. Tupin said, "I don't think that was a really good idea. There's a lot of unknowns.